Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello. My name is Jane Heidenreich, and we're going to talk about beekeeping today. I have been beekeeping with my husband for about 7 years now, and we have anywhere from 12 to 2 beehives, so not very many now, but that's okay. I have a special guest that came today, and her name is Britta McCollum. She's from Fort Dodge, and she's a royalty. That's why she said that. Britta is the 2023 Princess for the Iowa Honey Producers Association. She brought a lot of stuff, and she's going to talk about basic beekeeping first. So I will let you go ahead.
All right. My name is Britta McCollum, as she said, and I'm a senior at Fort Dodge High School, and I've been keeping bees for about 5 years now. And so by the time I'm 25, I will have 10 years of experience. When I first got started beekeeping, I registered or applied for an Iowa Honey Producers Scholarship, which granted Iowa youth supplies for beekeeping. So the hive, the bees, the classes, and they also provided me with a mentor to teach me how to keep bees. And I'm an avid believer that once you get into a beehive is when you do all the learning. Because when you're sitting in class, you're not able to get your hands on a beehive, right? And knowing the language of honeybees is very vital when keeping bees. So, what I started out with was a package of bees, which came with a queen and about 2 pounds of bees, and I put them in this little box. And from this little box, they would leave, go out, and bring back nectar from different flowers, and they bring back water and pollen. And what they do is they build on this empty frame, right here, and then they eventually get to this wax. And in this one, we have a whole bunch of honey. Pass it around here, sir. It's going to be heavy. Yeah. So in that frame is this bottom box. And what bees usually put in the middle are the brood, which are baby bees. And they start out as like the tip of a pencil. And then from that, they grow into larvae, and then eventually into a baby bee. And it usually takes about, I think it was 28 days for worker bees. I'm not too good with numbers. Eventually, bees will build up to the smaller box. And this is where you put your honey supply in. And I did bring a frame. And this is how much I take off. In order to make bees and beekeeping sustainable, you only take off the 2 top boxes, or how many ever you build on top, because bees actually do eat the honey on the bottom boxes. That's their food supply for the winter. And so you have the worker bee, which I was going to bring in coins, because I was thinking about this during class. A worker bee is like the size of a dime. It's not too big. And then worker bees are female bees, and they're assigned different roles. So you have nurse bees, you have security bees, which stand out of the hive, and if they see you coming, and they know you, and they know you're going to take their honey, they might come after you, right? And then the nurse bees take care of the baby bees, they take care of the queen. They basically do all of the work, and these are the female bees of the hive. And then you get into the drones. They're about the size of a nickel, and basically all they do is they mate with the queen. And then they die.
And then die.
So all of those are male bees, and they're essentially useless unless they're mating with the queen. And then the queen is the size of a quarter, and a lot of people believe that she is like doing everything in the hive, but all she's really doing is setting the mood and then hatching baby bees. I imagine her like the president. She can set the tone, but she can't impeach herself. She can't make the bees do the work, right? And so the worker bees can really take her out at any point, right? And what makes the queen so special is the workers feed her this royal jelly. And I really didn't know until today what royal jelly was, but it's a high percentage of water and then some proteins and honey. And what the bees do is they feed this baby bee the royal jelly for about 14 days. And after 14 days, it makes a queen. And I did bring queen cells to show you, because bees will build their brood in that frame, and it'll be pretty flat. But bees hang off the side of the hives, and I do have a few. And you can have two different kinds of queen cells. You can have supersedure or you can have swarm. And if a beehive gets too packed, they're going to swarm. And swarming refers to do you ever see bees in trees and they're hanging out just like in clumps? Yeah. So that's a beehive that decided that they were too packed and wanted to move and leave and go somewhere else. And what happens then is they take half of the food supply and half of the bees and they leave. And as a beekeeper, I do not prefer when they do that, because that means I'm losing bees and I'm losing honey. And so what we usually do is when we see these queen cells coming, we take another box and we put half the bees into that box, the queen, and some supplies for them to start their own hive. And so then I get 2. And then from 2 I get 4, then from 4 I get 8, and from 8 I get 16. When I first started, I started with 2 hives, and I really didn't think that it would go any further than that. But then they started to multiply. And now I have about 12 hives. I started with 15 this winter, and I lost 3 due to winterization. And what bees do in the winter is they clump into a ball of bees, and they circle around the queen. And they do this to feed her, and they make heat. And the way they make heat is they shake their bodies really fast, right? And they can generate heat so that the hive is about 90 degrees, and they stay warm all winter. So I thought that was pretty cool. They don't hibernate, they just kind of stay cozy in their home. Bees are really smart. Did you guys know that?
No, I guess.
There's a study that was done, and this was a fact I learned from a speech judge. There's a study done where bees were put into a box, and the goal was to move this little metal ball around the box till they found a source of honey or food or water. And it took a while for the bees to learn this, but once they did, they went back to their hive, they taught all the other bees, and then the other bees were able to cheat on that test. And then they just kept doing that, going back and forth until they were the fastest bees ever. So bees can learn really fast. And the way that they source the flowers that they get pollen from is they look for resources and they go back and they do this waggle dance where they shake their bums, right? And that points in the direction that the bees need to go. I'm sorry, I'm not talking in the mic. But is anybody allergic to pollen? Okay, I opened this up in class one time, and I learned that one of my classmates were allergic to pollen. And you actually have a photo of this. Bees carry this pollen from flowers on their legs, and it's basically like grocery bags.
Yeah, right here, this part,
Oh,
the yellow part. That's all pollen.
I didn't realize it was that.
and depending on the flower, this can be blue, purple, orange, red, or yellow. And it all depends on the type of flowers you have in the area. Are any of you guys gardeners? Gardens? Do you do flowers, vegetables, all of that? I'm a really avid advocate for promoting biodiversity in our communities. Me and my mom have secretly started making our lawn clover instead of grass, so that the bees can have another resource. Now,
Clover honey.
yeah, usually I just get into the subtle parts of biodiversity. It can give bees different resources in order to find different foods, and it's kind of like a variety of food on Thanksgiving. But the importance of biodiversity includes resilience. So with our climate changing, different species of plants are going to die out, and different species have a resistance to it. And it's important to discover those species that have resistance to climate change, because then they can go on and keep living, right? So from different species, we get different types of honey. This is my first bottle of honey from my first year. This is my second. And then this is the previous year, right here. And I'll turn these around so you can see. You can see the difference from the colors of honey. And that means they collected different types of honey from different flowers. Here. You can really see the difference in the color. In my first year, my bees filled their hive all with honey instead of baby bees, and so we had to take it out. And it ended up being very light in color, like a bright yellow. And that honey was from linden trees. They tend to flower in the spring, and then the flowers fall off.
Very fragrant.
And then in the fall, my bees collect goldenrod honey. And so, you know the yellow flowers along highways? Bees resort to that during what's called the dearth. And the dearth refers to a period of time where there's less flowers blooming. And so the bees have less resources to collect from. And they really need resources during the fall. And so they'll collect from goldenrod, different trees that are sprouting during the fall, or maybe your trash cans for our soda pop, right?
Good.
I've gotten several calls from gas stations and houses that have pop cans piling in their trash cans, and I'm like, I can't really do anything for you. So, different types of flowers will produce different types of honey.
I have a question. How do you know
How do I know?
which flowers they're going to?
Different beekeepers aim to collect different types of honey. And so from the classes I was taught that a minty flavor honey comes from linden trees, and then goldenrod honey kind of smells like dirty socks.
Oh, so it's the flavor and the aroma that you includes.
You can also tell kind of by the color.
Okay.
Clover honey tends to be lighter in color, while like buckwheat tends to be like a dark caramel color.
We have a spot down, not me, but there is a honey grower that's down by the Booyer River, and it's all white clover down there, and the first year we got honey from her, it was crystal clear. It was crystal clear. I've never seen it, so I asked her, you know, what's the deal? And that's exactly what she said.
So a bee will make 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in its lifetime.
Oh, my.
That's it. 1/12. And like I said before, I'm really bad with numbers, so I wrote it down. So this is my 1 pound bottle of honey, and it needs 556 worker bees in order to make 1 pound. And to put that more into perspective, it takes 2 million flowers to make 1 pound of honey. So you can imagine how much bees you would need and how many flowers you would need in order to make, my last number was 556 pounds.
Oh, you do?
So you take 556 times 556. I'm not going to do that math because I got a B in it. So if I don't leave anything with you today, other than like teaching you basics in beekeeping, I would like to leave you with leaving your yards with biodiverse flowers so that bees can get more resources and we can have more honey in order to keep our bees blooming. And the best way to promote beekeepers is to buy from locals, right? Because if you put money into your local economy, you're going to have more beehives, and more beehives means more pollination. So, we also have wax. And 1 pound of wax requires 10 pounds of honey in order to make it. And so it's easy to get lost in that number, because then you have your lip balms, you have lotions that you can make. And it's good to be conscious of all the things that you're taking from beehives, because in the end, if you take too much, it becomes unsustainable and not ethical. And so, just wanted to bring that up. And you can almost replace any sugar product or any like baked good or a recipe that calls for sugar or brown sugar with honey. And there's a conversion chart online. I believe it's half the sugar you would use would be honey. So, and I really like to use honey in my coffee. We like to put it on ice cream. We like to make shortbread cookies with it. And I've even made bread with honey. Usually when I make bread, I use honey instead of sugar. That's pretty much all I have for you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Do you live in the country, I'm assuming?
No, actually,
Yeah.
I'm an urban beekeeper, meaning I keep in the city of Fort Dodge. I'm actually right in the middle, a block away from the Dodgers Stadium.
Oh.
Have you guys ever been to Fort Dodge?
Yes.
So I started with 2 beehives in my backyard. In my first year, I got a letter from our city, and it was one of my neighbors asking me to remove my beehive. And if I didn't remove them within 2 weeks, I would get a $500 fine per beehive. And now this was my first year learning. I was 14, I didn't have a car, and so I kind of had to figure out how to keep my bees in my backyard, or else I would have to ask my mom for a ride every time I wanted to get in the hive, right? And so I went around my neighborhood, and I started a petition for honeybees. And you want to know what my neighbors said when I knocked on their door and asked them to sign my petition? There's bees in our neighborhood? And you would never know that you have a beehive in your neighborhood because bees are everywhere. You can't stop a beehive from going in a tree. You can't track a bee that stung you to its original hive. You just kind of have to deal with honeybees, just like the way that they have to deal with humans. So it's kind of a two-way street. And just like I said before, they're just as smart as people, and so just imagine what they can do to you. Right? And I started this petition first on paper, and then we went online to websites like Facebook, Instagram, and then my brother also posted on Reddit, and we ended up reaching people from Texas. And this brought urban beekeeping into attention in our city, and it made people realize that there's other urban beekeepers in our city that we never knew about. And I think it's really cool because when I move, I would like to move to a city. And there's concepts like green roofs, which have bees on them. And many beekeepers do keep their bees on roofs, like in New York City. There's some bees that were discovered were making red honey, and they found out they were making red honey from syrup from a cherry factory. You know those little cherries you put in like Shirley Temples? Yeah. They were finding syrup from those and putting it in their hive. And so they can get honey, they can get syrups from your bird keeper or your hummingbird feeders. Yeah. That's a common thing that we see. We see blue liquid in our beehives, and that's when we know that they're really struggling for flowers. And also, dandelions. I see dandelions all over Fort Dodge now, and I kind of saw them when I was driving in. And they are the first thing that blooms in the spring, right? What you don't know, probably, is I learned this from a master beekeeper. Or not master beekeeper, master gardener. What dandelions do is they go deep into the dirt, and they mix up the soil composition, which can make your dirt healthier for your flowers, right? And so it's actually really good to keep those weeds in the ground for the time being. And it's really good not to spray them, because when you spray them, it can cause bees to get those chemicals and bring them back to the hive, and that can lead to some beekeepers losing their entire hive. And it can also cause, when it rains, we have this thing called watershed, and you can wash all of this water with chemicals into the water bodies like the Des Moines River or lakes, and bees need a water source. And so if bees go to the water source and there's a bunch of chemicals in it, it brings it back to the hive and spreads all out. And watershed is really important to us too, because if our waters are polluted, so is our drinking water and our bathing water. And so it's just important to keep conscious of what we're doing with our lawns and our yards. So, and then we also have farmers that spray. And if I put my bees onto this website called Field Watch, a farmer has to look at that, and this might be a pain in the butt for them, but they have to look at that, and if they see my beehive within their area, they have to wait till the nighttime to spray their fields. And to prevent further pesticides getting in my beehives, I can put a cloth with water on it, and I can leave it overnight, and then open them back up in the morning. There's also pests that go into beehives. So we have a thing called the varroa mite, and it's again the tip of a pencil. And what that does is it gets into the bee cell and plants inside. And once a baby bee is placed in there, it connects to the body of the baby bee. And when the baby bee grows up, it'll suck the fat out of the baby bee, and the baby bee will deteriorate. And you can see the wings start to like crumble and fall. And that's one of the biggest problems that beekeepers have nowadays. And the problem with this is varroa mites grow exponentially, while bees have to grow kind of like steer steps. You can only have so many bees in a hive at one time. We only have 2 of these boxes down here that can hold bees. And so once those are full, that's all the bees you're going to have in that cycle. But these varroa mites, they can hatch about 5 eggs in one bee cell. And then those babies spread, and then they spread until there's just too much to handle. And these pests are known for wiping out entire hives. If you go into the winter with one, you can lose an entire hive by the end. So beekeepers have found this medicine, basically. Bees are like dogs. If you neglect them, they might die. And so it's important to go in and monitor, and if they need medicine, you go ahead and give them it. Because my job really isn't to make honey or make baby bees or do anything that the bees are doing. My job is to be kind of like a monitor. If the bees are trying to do something that's going to harm them, I kind of go in there and I stop it. I'm basically a parent. And that's all I do. So when people tell me I did a good job making the honey, I don't take the credit. And then we have small hive beetles, which are beetles that go in, and they kind of are in more shaded areas and more humid. And these have been increasing. And we have little traps that we put them in too. And then we have American foul brood, and if I find that in my beehive, I have to light it on fire. Yeah, it's a really vicious disease. We also have chalk brood, which can mummify the bees. It's a disease, and it comes from a lack of sunlight, I think. I can't really remember, but it can cause the bees to become like chalk and mummies. And so the bees will have to dig it out and restart. And I've found that my bees tend to have more chalk brood if they have a little bit. And so we have to retire whole frames of honey and wax and then put in whole new ones. And do any of you like comb honey on your toast? Yeah? So I don't use comb honey. In order to make that, you take out this frame and you let the bees just build and build the wax until it's time to harvest, and then you cut it out. I use these frames, and that's because I said that it takes 10 pounds of honey in order to make 1 pound of wax. And so I keep this on here because in order to save the resources, we let them build, and then we keep it, and then next year when we have it, they can just start building their honey supply right away and start making their baby bees. And so when I have to retire a frame, that's a whole bunch of work done by the bees I have to retire.
That's why it's expensive.
It's expensive. Also, if you can see this bottle, it's starting to crystallize. There's a price tag, but this is from my local Hy-Vee. And you can start to see that there's like a cloudy color, and that's called crystallization. And it happens when honey is put into a cooler environment, and it's allowed to just get cold, right? And what you don't want to do is you don't want to put that in the microwave, because honey is actually considered a living food because it has all these good enzymes and bacteria that come from the pollen and the flowers from your area, and it can actually help with your allergies. And that's why you want to buy from local farmers too, because then you're able to get rid of those allergies from your local area. But it is nice to try honey from like different areas, like Florida. I have a bottle from Europe. So, like I said, different honeys will try, like have different flavors. I have a manager from Florida. She said she didn't like honey before because it tasted like oranges, and she hates oranges. And then I let her have some of mine, and she's like, wow.
Oh.
So,
Do you feed your bees
I do feed my bees.
in the spring and the fall?
Sometimes, so if they're doing well, we'll just only give them a little bit in the fall, and then in the spring, we'll see how they're doing, and if they're struggling once they get out of winter, we'll go ahead and make some sugar water. It's like a sugar syrup. It's 1-to-1 of water and sugar, and then in the fall, it's 2-to-1. 2 sugar to 1 cup of water. And so, I only do that if I really need to. I never feed them during the spring or in the summertime when they're producing honey in the top boxes, because I want my honey to be authentic. Now, I'm not going to have all the information for you. Bees are a science, and science is always evolving. So, I could learn something in 20 years, and then learn another thing in 60. It just keeps going and going. I'm still learning stuff from today, and tomorrow, and the next day. You never really stop. And I think that's the thing that like draws me into some science fields. You're never going to stop learning, and there's always going to be something new. So.
You're going to college next year?
Mm-hmm.
What are you planning on studying?
I'm planning on studying psychology, and I haven't really decided what I want to do with my whole college career. I've considered minoring, and I've considered double majoring, and now I'm considering triple majoring in psychology, forensics, and environmental
I was
sciences.
gonna say environmental science.
Yeah.
I was waiting for that.
I only recently discovered like environmental science studies. So I took an AP environmental science class this year, and I got roped in by my AP coordinator. And it was a journey. I learned about soil composition, I've learned about topography. Like in your part of Iowa, you have these rolling hills that are really prone to watershed and land deterioration. It's really important to protect that. And I've learned about sustainable energy sources, oil fracking, and some bees. Just a tiny unit. I've learned about population sizes, and there's a unit on social and cultural aspects of environment. And so our land affects how we think of things and how we grow up to be. And so a lot of people from Iowa are going to be farmers, and they're going to have strong roots in agriculture, right? Somebody from New York might have more of an industrialized view of the world, like making everything from factories and just not having to take a car an hour away to go to the grocery store, right? So I've learned a lot of things from that class, and I really like to geek out with my friends, and just, I've tried to do a little bit here, but I don't want to do it too much, like watershed and topography. I really like those things,
Good.
so.
Good for you, good.
Thank you.
So where are you going to go to school?
I'm gonna go to Iowa Central for 1 year, and then I'm gonna transfer to Iowa State, or maybe somewhere else.
Oh, it's fine.
Maybe. I've considered going to Colorado or Minnesota to join their B-Lab program. I'm kind of a go with the flow type of person,
Oh,
so
good for you.
thank you.
Wow, I'm very
Any other questions? Do you have photos you want to show?
I have a little couple.
All right.
I think you know. It took me this long, I might as well use them. Okay.
Okay, I'm just gonna, these are really old pictures, but this just gives you an example of a hive. These are the two bottom boxes she's talking about where the brood is. These are the stands, the bottom boards. What we do now is we put the bees on a stand that's 18 to 24 inches tall. And the reason is because of skunks.
Ooh.
It keeps them out of there. Skunks will eat bees. And they'll stand at the front of the hive and scratch, and they come out and they just eat them. So they could eat a whole hive in a couple, a week or so.
Have you had that problem?
I have skunks. I got this one that's huge.
I've had my dogs eat my bees.
Have you?
Yeah, they go up and they munch. And one of them's a black lab. And the color black reminds bees of black bears,
Mhm.
which eat honeys. And they associate the color black with somebody coming to invade. And so my black lab kind of gets the brunt of the storm when they go to attack her. Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
Needs a true learning experience.
Yeah. Oh, let's see. Oh, these are called nukes. And these are, you can buy these to start your hive. It's one way to start your hive. Inside, there's 4 to 5 frames that already have a queen within them. She's laying, there's honey. And what you do is, I got a picture here, I think, of how you take them. There he is opening one up. You can see, whoops, jumping ahead. Anyway, he's got the smoker ready to go, which is very important. Yeah, we're smoking again. Oh, we're jumping again. Okay, and what they do is they take the middle frames out and they put the nukes right in exactly how they were. You got a hive going, a live hive going. This is, we are checking to see whether we should have a super on that, and definitely we need a super on that one because it's pretty full. Or you're going to have a swarm. If the queen doesn't have enough room, she's going to take half of them with her. Oh, that's a good one. I don't know what that is. I've got translate. Okay. That's just checking. You can look down. What you do is when they say it's a 5-frame hive, you can look down and see the bees. And if they've got 5 frames that where they're working on, that's a 5-frame hive, or a 3-frame hive. Or if it gets to, if you have 10 frames and it gets to 8, you should put a super on. Your next box should go on to give them more room to go up, because the bees will work their way up in the hive. And there's just a frame. Okay, this is taking the honey off. On top of here, it's a felt board is what we use. And you put a spray of substance that the bees don't like. Put that on top, take the top off, put that on top of your hive for about 10 minutes. And then what happens is the bees will go down into the hive. You can take the super off, brush off the bees, take them into bee, put them in the extractor, and that works pretty good, unless they're crazy that day. Okay, this is where what they're doing is they're taking a frame here that has honey on it. It's full with a serrated knife, and they're uncapping it. In other words, they get the honey, and if it's capped, if it's not capped, you shouldn't use that, because you want to go from, when they bring that nectar in, it is 60% water, and they'll chew it down to 10%. When it gets to 10%, they'll cap it with wax. And that's what we're just cutting that part off, putting in the extractor, which will spin the honey out. There's an example of an extractor. It's a big machine that uses centrifugal force and goes around. Your honey goes down in the bottom. You open it up, this latch here, valve, and then it goes through two sieves to get the wax out into that bucket. And then from there, we have a heater we put on the bucket, and it goes up to about 90 degrees. You won't want to go any higher because you will destroy the flavor and the enzymes. But it kills anything, spores or anything that might be in there. Also makes it easier to pour into your bottles that time. So that's usually a really sticky day. That's what it looks like. Oh, well, that was quick. Okay, here's an example of the queen in the middle. Do you see her size? The drone on that side, he's a little bit bigger, and the worker bee, of course, is nice and thin and busy all the time. But, yeah. And the drone does not have a stinger, so you can, and in this fall, they kick them out, get rid of them. They don't want them in the winter. They don't do anything. Okay, well, here. Let's see if I can go back to that one. That was talking, I guess not. That's your honey that you get. Oh, well. Push. Okay. Now, wait. Oh, we're back to the beginning. Okay. I had some other ones of a swarm.
I may have a photo on my phone. I can pull it up.
Oh, I don't know if you can get that up
Here. I can just go around and show.
there. Okay.
Jane, what kind of honey do you have? Is it
Just wildflowers.
wildflowers?
That's what we have out. Yeah. So, yeah. I know I was in Savannah one time and went to the Savannah Bee Company place, and they have actual fields of lavender. So they could sell it as lavender honey. And then that's pretty
Oh,
cool.
yeah, wow, that's a
Oh, yeah. Seen those.
Usually those swarms are very calm, really. They won't bother you. Because those bees are full of 3 days of food. And how do you feel at Thanksgiving? So they just are very relaxed and they don't really care. And so they'll hang there for about 3 days at the most. But the queen sends out her scouts, and they'll go and find, they're very mathematical, they'll find the best place to build their frames and everything and where they want to live, and they'll come back and tell the queen what they found, and the next one will come back and tell the queen what they found, and they'll have determine where they're gonna go. And they do a little dance, and that's how they communicate. So it's really kind of cool. I've never seen them do it, but they've done a lot of studies on them. So, okay, any questions? More questions?
Where do you buy in the beginning?
Buy your bees?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of people in Iowa that supply bees. You can buy nukes, you can buy boxes of bees.
Do they come in the mail?
They can, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, or you can go pick them
Oh,
up.
you can go pick them up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, there's, groups that, what they do, they have probably 1,000 hives, and they'll take their hives and load them up on semis, and they rent them to the, almond fields out in California for the season, because they don't have enough bees, and they need the bees to pollinate these almond trees. It's the only thing that they can use. So, these people make quite a nice amount of money, but it's really kind of different. It's neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
You have beehives too? How long have you
more
been?
ideas?
I'm realizing I did talk about the smoker.
Oh.
So, I'm realizing I'm not talking about a lot of things. I just kind of get started. I get on tangent. Yeah. So what the smoker does is you put newspaper clippings, you can put wood chips. I put lavender in mine because I just like to smell better. And have any of you guys seen the Bee Movie? Yeah? So in the Bee Movie, it depicts the smoke being harmful for the bees, which can make people think that smoke is bad. But what it does is they think that there's a fire. And because you're creating this like artificial fire, they think that they need to like get up and leave. And so instead of leaving the honey behind, they go ahead and eat it all up, and then it fills up their bellies, and they get really kind of slow and tired, and it can make them so full that they can't fly around as much, and they can't really sting you as well. So that's the true purpose of the smoker, is to kind of like slow them down by getting them to eat more and just be more sleepy. And then I thought there was something else. Just keep losing it today. It's been a long school year, I'm not gonna lie. But during the
Safety stuff. Put on the smokers.
There's a number of safety things that you should always do. Number one is cover your face. Keep your face covered. Bees will go for your eyes. The water will go for your eyes. Okay, I've got one, yeah. So you cover your face with your, always. If you get a bee in here, what you do is turn, now, this sounds really easy, but I panic anyway, so you turn towards the sun because they like the sun, so they'll go onto the inside and then just kind of walk that bee out of your,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, that's what I
As I'm
said.
jumping and screaming, yeah.
That's what I said. No, I did this the other day. I should not tell you this. I went down I was doing some seeding on the flowers, and so I thought, oh, I'll go look at the bees. So I went down there, and they were cleaning, that morning they were cleaning the hives out, the dead bees in the bottom, and they cleaned that all out. And I'm watching them, and I thought, oh, I can help them. I got a yardstick. So I go like this, and they came after me. I'm not kidding. I got stung 4 times in my head, because I didn't have a hat on, didn't have a smoker. I learned my lesson. They taught me a good one. They got me good, but oh, crazy.
Bees can actually sense your emotions and your pheromones. So if you're afraid of them, they're going to sense that, and they become high school bullies, and they pick on you even more. And once they sting you in one spot, that becomes like a big target. And so like every time I get stung, I've been stung about like 25 times maybe, I like run away and I'm like, Mom, you're gonna have to take over, I need to go take care of this. My first year, I didn't use the suit. I spent about from early May to about maybe late September without my bee suit. I would just go on in with like a tank top, shorts, and then like flip-flops. I was really brave for like a beginner. But when you first start, they don't really have anything to protect, and so they really aren't going to be that aggressive until they have like baby bees, and they have honey and resources. And then I learned my lesson one day when I had a suit on, actually, and I was just kneeling down to help my mom with a big brood box, and we got through my suit and onto my knee. And that's when I started wearing the suit again. So, kind of learned my lesson. But, this is a fun fact I learned from somebody from Iowa State. If you get stung 10 times in a year, you're probably more prone to anaphylactic shock than if you were to get stung like 0 times. And the perfect number in order to be immune to this anaphylactic shock is close to 500 stings in 1 year.
Oh.
So the more you get stung, the more likely you're not going to go into anaphylactic shock when you work on bees. And some beekeepers always have an EpiPen on them. I know a few people that are allergic to bees that still keep bees. And a doctor might actually just prescribe you an EpiPen, just for safety reasons.
Good.
Yeah.
How often do you check your bees? bees that you go actual into your boxes?
We try to go in there every 2 weeks
Really?
because that's the perfect time for queen cells to develop and hatch. And so we don't want that to happen or else they're gonna leave. And also, taking apart a beehive is like taking apart a home. And so every time I rip apart a bee box is every time that the bees have to repair the home. Plus, I would be pretty angry if somebody ripped my roof off. So, yeah.
It's easy to check, if you just take one frame out and you can see honey, an arch of honey on that frame. If you can see a little bit of brown, that's your pollen or your protein. In the spring, that's being used all the time, so you will not see that. And then you see some brood in the center. You know you have a queen, and she's doing good. You can put that back in and go on to the next one, because you don't have to tear the whole thing apart. But if you see something's odd, maybe there's a mouse in there, something like that, they do go crazy. So they do get upset. But safety things, you have the face cover, you have the smoker to keep them calm. The gloves are very important because you're putting your hands into that hive. What else? I think hide tool. This is used to get the frames apart. The bees have what they make is called propolis, and they seal all the holes of the hive. And if it, over the winter, that can be really hard to get into, so you gotta get it open with that. But this is a handy tool to use. And I got a brush, just a very soft brush, to get the bees off. Okay.
Very interesting.
Oh, I learned so much.
There's really no way wrong to keep bees. Every beekeeper is going to have their own opinion. So if you were to go into a beehive with me, it might differ from Jan. And if there is a third beekeeper you went to, it might differ from both of us, or it might be the same. So keeping bees can differ from person to person, and it's mainly your own personal opinion on how it works for you. So.
And we need them for agriculture, or we won't have food.
It's part of the food cycle.
Every 1 bite out of 3 comes from pollinators. So if we didn't have pollinators, that would be 1/3 of your plate gone. All right.